But this does bear the question, right? Is it dangerous, right? Is this potentially going to become a more or too accessible option? Joining me, someone with maybe a different take, is Charles Camosy, ethics professor at Fordham University. Thanks very much for coming on the program. Appreciate it. So, what do you make of Diane's point, which is, look, the standards here in the United States are very high in order to get access to this kind of medication, and there's not a concern that the U.S. is going to turn into the Netherlands or one of these European countries where people with mental illness can get them as well?
Well, first of all, let me just offer my compassion to your previous guest and say I've had family members die terrible deaths, and my father just completed a round of chemotherapy, and so we just need to just acknowledge her situation here. That said, Dan, you know better than most that hard cases make bad law, and unfortunately, this is a hard case that, unfortunately, if it goes through, will make bad law. We've seen this in California already. California had a very similar situation where a very dramatic story of a woman with a brain tumor basically led to that state legalizing physician-assisted suicide. And now California, as your opening made clear, is trying to expand it very quickly, trying to expand it to people who aren't dying, to people with dementia. This happened in the Netherlands. It happened in Canada. You can't control this. It starts out one thing, and then it quickly becomes something else.
But isn't there a way to draw a line? Isn't there a way, as Diane was pointing out, to have screening and testing and standards that make it such that it really needs to be terminal, it really needs to be a condition where it's going to be an ugly death, et cetera?
In theory, yes, but the messiness of how public policy works in every place, but especially in the United States, where we so value autonomy and freedom and choice and people making their own decisions, it quickly becomes something else, because people say, well, 6 months, why not 12 months? Why not 2 years? Does it really have to be physical suffering? What about mental suffering? And people say, it's my autonomy, my choice, my right, my body, my freedom. And we see what's happening with regard to that. And if the California legislators who are proposing Senate Bill 1196 get their way, you won't need to be dying. You could even just have sort of moderate dementia and be eligible for this. And here's something else, Dan, I think it's important to keep in mind. Oregon has essentially held the line on this, but and they've had this legal since the 90s. But if you just look at their own data, they suggest that the cases like the one we just saw don't drive people to assisted suicide. In fact, physical pain doesn't even make the top 5 reasons people in Oregon access physician-assisted suicide. It's things like fear of loss of autonomy, fear of being a burden on others, fear of loss of enjoyable activities. And so there's reasons, so many reasons, why disability rights groups are adamantly opposed to these laws. And it's so interesting, right? These blue states. One reason I'm so glad your down the middle program is covering this as fairly as you are. These blue states like Maryland, like Connecticut, like even New York, it's up for New York right now, Minnesota. These are really tough battles because it doesn't fit into a kind of right-left dichotomy you normally think of it. Disability rights groups are the ones most strongly opposed, and they tend to be of the left.
It's interesting. Look, this is important, and it is difficult. And there's no right and wrong answers. It's a question of how do we draw these lines, et cetera, that, as you correctly say, are tough to draw sometimes. Charles Camosy, thank you so much for coming on the program as well. Really appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.